Hey guys, John V here from Phone Arena. Right now you're watching our video review of the Motorola Moto G. Motorola has something very interesting here with the Moto G just because it has a no contract price point of $179 for the base model, and when you think about smartphone prices in general, that's pretty impressive in many fronts. It closely resembles the Moto X with its design, and on top of that there's a really neat flavor of being able to personalize it with the different colored rear casings. Now the hardware inside of it, it's not the most cutting edge, but nevertheless for the price point it gives it a very humble appeal. But knowing all that, with the lower price point, are we going to see any compromises? Let's find out in this review right now. Well, this certainly isn't a surprise, seeing that the Moto G takes a lot of design elements that we saw already with the Moto X, and honestly, when we look at them from afar, they're almost identical to one another. So here we have the Moto G and the Moto X, and from the front and even to the extent in the back, it's almost hard to tell them apart just because they're very similar in terms of their dimensions, though we do notice that the Moto G is just a tad thicker than the Moto X. And just like the Moto X, the Moto G has a very form-fitting figure. It's very nice in the hand, that perfect size, not too large, not too small, and seeing that has a curved rear casing, it really contours our hand as we hold it, so it's very comfortable to hold. Its body is constructed out of the same polycarbonate plastic casing as the Moto X. Now with our particular unit, it's actually finished with a soft touch matte coating, so it gives it a very clean look at all times. We have to applaud Motorola just because for the price point and all, the Moto G has a pretty good design. It's ergonomic, it fits well in the hand, very comfortable, and decent amount of construction too, and there's also some stylish elements with the back colored platings. It's packing a healthy size 4.5-inch 720p LCD panel, so it's a little bit of a step down from the 4.7-inch screen of the Moto X, but it suffices in many ways. There's a pleasant glow to the display, giving it a nice vibrant look, and with that, colors tend to exhibit just a little bit of saturation, always a good thing. The viewing angles are also okay. At wide angles we notice some distortion, you could see it there. And finally, when it comes to outdoor visibility, it's also decent. We just need to shield it away from the sun every now and then, just because the brightness output doesn't seem potent enough to view in direct sunlight. It's not the most stunning display we've seen, but when factoring the price point and all, we're just very happy to get a pleasant looking display here with the Moto G. On the right edge of the phone, we have its power button and volume controls, which are in typical locations. They're raised and have really good solid responses when pressed, while the left side is free and clear of any ports or buttons. Along the bottom edge of the phone, we just have the micro USB port for charging data connectivity. We have its standard microphone, while on the top edge we have nothing but just 3.5mm headset jack and the noise cancellation mic. And finally, the rear, Motorola has outfitted it with a 5-megapixel autofocus camera, which features an LED flash and only 720p video recording. On the front, there's a 1.3 megapixel camera, and next to the rear camera, we have the notches here for its internal speaker. What we have here running on the Moto G is a mostly stock Android 4.3 Jelly Bean experience. So unlike the Moto X, it doesn't have any of those enhancements like touchless controls or active displays. But despite that, it's a very simple, intuitive interface. Unlike some of those other custom Android experiences floating about out there, this one here is straightforward, so we're not really inundated with a ton of useless or redundant features. So with the notifications panel, it's like what you find with typical Android, very useful. On top of that, we have controls to some of the connectivity features. The app panel is laid out in your traditional grid-like view, and it's separated from the apps and widgets options there. And of course, we're still given a wealth of personalization thanks to the widgets, the live wallpapers, and all the sorts that we normally find. Being a Motorola device, it features Motorola Assist, which we also find with the Moto X. Now with this particular feature, it essentially allows the phone to do some basic tasks for us. For example, depending on the time, it automatically will quiet our phone during the night or when we're at a meeting. Under the hood, it's powered by a dual-core 1.2 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor coupled with 1 GB RAM and the Adreno 330 GPU. Now, for basic things, it gets the job done, suffices, but it shows its strain in certain parts. Like here in the home screen, when we have live wallpaper, every now and then, if there's a lot of widgets on screen, we notice some slowdown. For more processor-intensive stuff, it's not quite as snappy as some higher-end devices on the market, and with that, we do notice just some choppiness every now and then with its operation. There are really few problems when it comes to typing up messages with its on-screen keyboard. We're presented with the stock Android one, so that means we have access to numbers from the top row. The layout itself is spacious, but every now and then its response is sometimes delayed. In order to reach its affordable cost, the Moto G lacks 4G LTE connectivity, so with 3G speeds, it is a little bit tedious when it comes to loading up complex web pages, but once they're loaded up, the performance is not that bad just because we're treated to some very smooth navigational controls, but page rendering is still a little bit slow at times. For those productivity-conscious folks out there, they'll be happy to know that the handset's preloaded with a quick office application. It works in conjunction with Google Drive to give us access to creating things like a Word document, spreadsheet, or even a PowerPoint presentation. When it comes to playing music, we have the usual Google Play Music application, so it's nothing different from other Android smartphones. As far as the audio quality from its internal speaker, we gotta say it's nothing more than average, though at the loudest volume setting, it tends to exhibit some crackling and even some strained tones, which sounds a little bit irritating. Alright, so it's not the most ideal thing to watch videos on just because of the size of the display. Again, nowadays we're used to really large ones, but nevertheless, it gets the job done when it comes to playing high definition videos. There's barely any slowdown or lag with its performance, and on top of that, it has support for a wide array of codecs out of the box. There really isn't a huge focus with the camera app just because, just like the Moto X, it's very slim with manual controls and shooting modes. So the nice thing about that is that it's a very simple one where we're just focused on taking photos. So what we have here is an HDR mode. We could choose to select touch focus if we want to. There's a slow motion video mode, panoramic mode, and of course we could adjust the aspect ratio from 16:9 to 4:3. Taking into consideration its affordable cost, we really can't be too critical about the quality from its 5 megapixel autofocus camera. It's not the best, nor is it the worst, so we could say it's okay as long as you're taking shots outdoors where there's plenty of lighting. Now, most people would be content in taking the snapshots and converting them to 4x6 printouts, but if you try blow up the shots, that's when you'll realize that the details are kind of lacking in this area. When it comes to color reproduction though, we gotta say it's right there in the neutral side. Under lower lighting situations, its shots tend to be underexposed, giving it a very dim look, and the details of course take a dip, very soft in tone. It's also prone to blurring if you're not holding the device steady. And finally, there is some evidence of noise. We're only given 720p video recording with the Moto G, so nothing really too enticing about that. Now the details are very flat, so it gives it a very subdued look. On top of that, the exposure tends to be a little bit finicky at times, and there is some noticeable artifacting elements that pop up as we're panning. The nice thing about it is that its continuous autofocus feature locks on very quickly, and it captures some clear audio. So it captures videos very smoothly when lighting is ample, but under lower lighting conditions, that's not the case. Usually it records at 30 frames per second, but that drops down to a very choppy 14 frames per second, and it's very noticeable. And that's the biggest thing that really detracts us from its quality. At the same time, there is a lot of noise and also some very soft looking details, again, not helping out the overall quality of this video. Generally speaking, we're able to carry out conversations on the Moto G with very few irritations, but it's not without its own set of flaws. For starters, the earpiece itself exhibits some noise, even when no one is speaking, and voices tend to sound a little bit hollow. When it's switched to the speakerphone, it emits a very noticeable crackling tone with voices, but luckily our callers didn't have any complaints on their end, as they're greeted with mostly clear voices. Battery life is actually good considering the fact that the handset's only packing along a 2070 mAh battery. Pretty small figure, of course, in this day and age, and the fact that it only features 3G connectivity, not 4G LTE connectivity. So with that, a full charge gets us close to 17 hours of normal usage. Motorola has something very intriguing with the Moto G. It represents something different just because in the past, we're always accustomed to getting handsets with 2-year contracts, but the Moto G really aims to buck that trend just because you're getting it at an outright price point of $180, and we see a lot of value in that considering its spec sheet, its performance, and the kind of simplified Android experience we get out of the box. It might not appeal to those power users or those hardcore Android fans because of course we know the Nexus 5 really brings that out, but the Moto G has a broader target. It's actually able to entice a wider range of people, those who are looking for something easy and inexpensive, and most importantly, getting the job done. So if you're shopping for someone who's looking for a phone that just works, the Moto G is going to be that option for you. At the same time, it's cheap and inexpensive, and when we think about cheap and inexpensive phones, they tend to be rather disappointing, but that's not the case here just because there's a lot of cool elements in play with the Moto G that really makes it a standout amongst all basic phones out there. So if you guys want to learn more about the Motorola Moto G, you could check out our website, phonearena.com. It's John V. Thanks for watching.